So I got this comment on my last video that I thought was a nice breakdown of some of the barriers that Bitcoin faces in widespread adoption. So JR Cardona, thank you for commenting. He says, as sure as I am on Bitcoin being the asset to rule all assets, governments with exit taxes and or capital gains taxes on it will limit the needed grassroots community support it needs. If I decide to start a small business and accept only cash and BTC, not only am I excluding the demographics that have the money that can support the business over several business cycles, middle and upper class consumers with their high limit credit cards, I am also creating a massive tax nightmare that would need a tax lawyer or a CPA just to make sense out of it. If normies are not even interested in learning about Bitcoin, then we sure as heck aren't going to build the more scalable layer 2 solutions needed for quicker and more frequent transactions. It feels like a chicken and egg problem. So I replied, I love Bitcoin, but why would anyone, even the most diehard believers, bother with the hassle of capital gains tax for everyday transactions? Also, I'd be willing to bet that even the majority of people who hodl and fully believe in its purpose would be too lazy to use it regularly. Humans are creatures of comfort at the end of the day. The only ones who would be willing to put up with the BS would be hardcore maxis, and if that's the type of person you have to be to fully integrate Bitcoin into your life, we're definitely a long way off mainstream adoption. And so that's what inspired me to make this video. Why even people who believe in Bitcoin still don't use it day to day, and why that problem runs a lot deeper than you might think. Let's start with the most obvious point, which is of course capital gains tax, the tax trap. Most governments treat Bitcoin as property, a commodity. It's not a currency, which means that every single transaction is a taxable event. If you buy a coffee, well, you now owe tax on the gain between when you bought the Bitcoin and when you spent it. And even if that's like 73 cents of capital gains tax, you're still legally expected to track it. So now you have to ask yourself, who is going to do that? Who is going to open a spreadsheet every time they buy lunch? You're going to need a tax lawyer or an accountant to have to track everything for you because you're not going to be bothered enough to do it yourself. And let's say you had the motivation to do it yourself, you probably wouldn't even have the know-how. So even hardcore Bitcoiners who believe in the system don't want to deal with that kind of stress. So instead, most people just hodl. They just hold and they sit on their Bitcoin and hope it just appreciates. And that's because using it is just inconvenient. Of course, it's important to note that there's things going on in the world that could be working in favor of this issue. For example, Missouri has passed legislation exempting capital gains from state income tax for individuals, which could potentially reduce the tax burden on Bitcoin transactions within the state. Obviously, that doesn't mean that federal capital gains taxes don't apply. They do. So if you're in Missouri or whatever the case may be, it's still important to be careful. And of course, it would be nice if there was exemptions in place for Bitcoin when it comes to federal capital gains taxes, but that is pretty unlikely to happen. And here's the headline from the Missouri Independent, which I forgot to scroll to. Now moving on to the next point, which is that humans are creatures of comfort. People don't change their behavior unless they absolutely have to. Everybody and their grandmother loves the idea of financial sovereignty until it's time to go to the supermarket. And everybody loves the concept of decentralization, right? Until you have to pay $4 in gas fees on a simple $6 purchase in the real world. And so at the end of the day, people use what's easiest, not what's ideologically pure or the most moral and correct thing to use. So of course, Bitcoin could be the future. I hope it is. But if it requires you to be a tax expert, a security specialist, and a macro analyst kind of guy, that's already 99% of the population pushed out of the picture. The only people who won't mind that kind of hassle are maxis, maximalists. And if being a Bitcoin user means being that kind of person, we're definitely a long way off from seeing it integrated into daily life. Now for the third point, which is the psychological catch, and that's what it really comes down to. It's not just a legal or technical problem, it's actually a psychological one, because Bitcoin adoption at a large scale doesn't just require better tools or faster networks or improving L2s. It requires a shift in how we think about money, risk, trust, that sort of thing. But most people aren't thinking about that at all. They're not waking up and reevaluating their relationship with fiat currency. They're just trying to buy milk, eggs, pay the rent, and that's it. So when someone asks, why isn't Bitcoin used more in everyday life? It's not necessarily because people don't believe in it. It's because belief isn't enough if using the system of Bitcoin feels like doing a chore. So where exactly do we go from here? What are we supposed to do? I still love Bitcoin, but I think it's time to start being honest about what's holding it back. And it's not just about the transactions per second. It's about comfort. It's about the hassle of it. It's about human nature elements to do with it. So until we solve that, either through policy changes or some sort of legal simplification or seamless layer 2 adoption, Bitcoin will probably remain what it is right now, a store of value, a hedge, a powerful idea, but definitely not daily currency for now or for the near future. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you feel like we're headed for a future where Bitcoin stays more like digital gold rather than digital cash? Let me know. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.